Shishmaraf could see how they're really doing.
Absolutely.
Oh, well, I introduced you last because I had a struggle today if I was going to say this part of your resume. It's not a court record, don't worry.
Oh.
Ethan
I was
earned,
prepared to run, that's all.
Ethan earned his undergraduate degree studying government and economics at Harvard University, where he graduated with honors. He subsequently gained a master's degree in polar studies from Cambridge University and a law degree from Hastings College of Law. Okay, so not only are you like a smart guy, you went to Harvard. I've been there. It's very fancy.
I was there too. It didn't take anything away, really.
Well, it was just, I'm like reading this and I'm like, oh wait, no, we should probably maybe say he went to community college because people like to vote for the dumbest person on the ticket. I'm bringing this up now because we have this sort of bizarre war on science.
Yeah.
We have this culture of people that they voted for George Bush because they wanted to have a beer with a guy who's a recovering alcoholic. They vote for Sarah Palin because she's the hottest governor from the coldest state. I mean, really?
Yeah.
Do we really need stupid people? Because I want people in leadership who don't argue science, who have a standard, and aren't afraid to be like, well, some of you don't know this, but I do, so we're going to do this. What do you say about that, Rick?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the governance in Alaska has to start adopting science and being honest about it and being transparent about it. I'm sure Ethan will once he's in the governor's mansion. But we have a history here of marginalizing and trivializing science when it doesn't agree with what we want to do politically. And that's exactly what Sarah Palin did as governor on several issues. Predator control, polar bears, where she was fundamentally dishonest about what her state biologist said about the federal listing. And then the big one, of course, was climate change. We got nothing out of the Palin administration on climate change, and now we realize why. She's not a believer. And faith is a wonderful thing because you don't have to have evidence for
well,
what
that's
you
the
believe.
whole point of faith.
Right.
Is that you don't.
You don't have evidence and you don't have that.
Science can't be the war on faith.
Yeah.
And I think that that's part of what's gone off the rails for people. It's like, well, you can either pick Jesus or are chromosomes considered, Jesus bugs, or, this sort of like ridiculous denial. But at the same time, science sometimes slams the faith on that.
But your point is perfect that, we have some huge problems, not just in Alaska, but globally right now, with population, overconsumption, our economic system is dysfunctional, ecosystems are collapsing throughout the world, we're in ecological overshoot, our ecological footprint is enormous, it's unsustainable, and we need to fix this stuff, and we can't do that by faith alone. So we have to use science, we have to make some rational decisions, and by trivializing it and marginalizing it, we're just not going to get there.
So Steve, is 2012 a good time for the rapture?
Works for me. I think that we actually have an opportunity, science and research-wise, in Alaska. We always have. We've always turned out very good scientists. And there are many ways in which Alaska is a frontier, and science is one of them. Scientists love to come up here and do research, but even in places that you don't think of, like, for instance, the social sciences.
Right.
We had a groundbreaking study that was done. It was sort of swept under the rug by the state health department powers that be, that had to do with the intervention in people's family problems and whether or not it worked. The study showed it didn't work. It was not politically convenient for it not to work, so they just swept it under the rug. This happens all the time. It's really important that politics supports science. We have a lot of predicaments, as Rick has talked about, but I think we also have opportunities.
Yeah.
Are you going to vote for him now, Ethan? I think
he's got that whole optimism thing going, which I always like.
No, I agree, though, that there are opportunities here if you have the right people in place.
We're gaining some of it now, like all the heat pump stuff. We're probably going to lead the nation in heat pump applications in another 10 to 12 years. Yeah.
The geothermal.
Well, they're taking heat right out of the seawater, out of the Earth's crust, all kinds of places.
And we're doing it out of necessity. But we're also doing it because I think people in Alaska have a real sense of wonder about the natural environment that we live in. And in order to make the most of it and to live well with it, you have to understand it. And that's not something that comes only from what we consider to be science through the more modern methodology, but also through traditional observation. I mean, you look at the traditional knowledge that the people of Alaska have had for thousands of years. It's observations about the environment we live in order so we can live in it in a way that is as stress-free as possible.
Yeah, that is exactly true, and that is another area where we're a frontier. In this cross-cultural communication, scientists, the new generation of scientists are not at all hesitant and indeed dependent on indigenous people to not just help them with their work, to help lead their work. It's coming to be realized that there's different ways of knowing the world, and the tribal and traditional ways of knowing the world carry knowledge from thousands of years. You know, just the way that you learn from your elders to look at the ice and what you see on it and to know what patterns mean. Science is not real good on describing this stuff, and they're learning how to listen in Alaska. They have been for a while.
Rick?
Yeah, there's a couple other angles here. Absolutely agree with everything that's been said here. There is sometimes I've seen science used as a weapon for an excuse to not do something. And I think the greatest example is all the money that Senator Stevens sent to the state to study climate change, but yet do nothing whatsoever in the Congress about it, to mitigate it or adapt to it. And that, I think, is a real travesty. So sometimes politicians will throw a lot of money into science as a justification for not addressing what we all reasonably can decide to do. Sometimes you just have to make a decision. Use the best knowledge and observations, as Ethan says, that you have, but don't use science as an excuse or our uncertainties as an excuse to do nothing when we have a pretty good idea that we better darn well be doing some things on climate change and energy sustainability.
Well, we have a bad habit of that, you know, throwing money at things to say that we really care. I mean, this last week, I think $50 million went towards abstinence-only education to try to get a vote in for, you know, getting the cloture vote.
Right.
You know, it doesn't take a rocket scientist or anybody else to figure out that abstinence only works really great until it doesn't.
I'm not sure rocket science is the right metaphor there.
It might be the perfect metaphor, actually.
I actually think it might be the perfect one. I want to talk about that, what science means to Alaska,
Yeah.
and sort of the throwback I've had to development, because I don't think that it's being used properly. So we're going to talk about that when we come back from this break.
The North.
I'm having so much fun. Welcome back to More Up North. I'm Shannon Moore. And my panelists, Rick Steiner, Steve Heimel, and Ethan Berkowitz. And before the break, we were talking about this sort of the manipulations of science. And as an Alaskan and Alaskans, you know, our Constitution affords us basic communism. No, I'm kidding. That's just what they're calling it now. This whole, you know, that we have this great reign over our different, whether it be oil or fisheries or timber or whatever it is. And I think that we have such a fantastic constitution. I think it's really great that Alaskans are an owner state, as it were. But it's difficult for me to want to go forward with development and be super pro-development when I've heard so many lies in the name of science come out of different administrations.
Sure.
Not just the Palin or the Parnell administration now. We have a new SP to deal with. But really this whole, the manipulation. I feel like at some point, you know, forget about it. I'd rather just let something sit there than you tell me it's going to be okay and it's not. And so I'm sure you dealt with this in the legislature because you're pro-development, responsible development.
You got to deal with truth. I mean, you got to find out some kind of truth, and sometimes the truth isn't what you want it to be, and you still might have to make a decision that might not be what people who are in favor of the science want to do, but you should know what the truth is before you make a decision. Informed decisions are absolutely critical to good policy, and we never really go to the effort to make informed decisions in the state legislature.
So